Welcome back to the Unfleshed podcast. This is episode 11, and today we have Jack Wallen here. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a great pleasure. So right out the gate, I know you're an author, but I also hear that you actually do like audio for several authors.
Yeah, I do. I've been a book narrator for about 20 years now. I started out with the Recording House for the Blind, and really enjoyed it. I was an actor. I am an actor. I'm a member of Actors Equity Association. I performed on Broadway, did a couple BBC films and a couple of independent films, and it was just kind of an extension of that. I started doing it, between gigs, and after I started, this path down authorship, I realized there was another route, another income stream to be had. So I thought I'll just record my books, and then all of a sudden I got all of these requests from these other authors to record their books, and I have yet to actually record one of my own books. It really sucks, but it's nice to be that busy. But I would eventually like to record my own books.
Yeah. And kind of what's the step process behind that?
It's a lot of isolation, but then so is writing. What I usually do is I spend about 2 hours a day recording audiobooks, because the human voice can't really go beyond that without getting into negative returns. After 2 hours, I start to lose my range, and because my normal speaking voice isn't really my narrating voice. You could speak in your normal voice all day, but when you start using all of the resonators and registers and everything of your voice, it becomes exhausting. So after about 2 hours, I stop. And in that 2 hour time, I can get usually about 20 minutes to 30 minutes of recorded audio, because I edit as I go. So I use a program called Audacity, and I'll hit record. I'll start recording. As soon as I mess up, I stop. I go back. I edit. That way, it's a lot easier for me, because I don't have to go back and listen to the whole thing. Well, actually, after I mess up, I go back. I listen to what I did, make sure there are no mistakes, and then I punch in all of the corrections, and then I pick up where I left off. The other route is you just start recording, and you go until you're done, and then you go back and edit. And I find that a little more complicated, because what you wind up with, especially in a program like Audacity, is you have one long track, and you have to go back and you have to punch in and copy and paste, versus the way I do it, you get a bunch of smaller tracks, and it's much more easy to realign things and punch in. And so after you get that done, then once you have to go back in and normalize it, and if necessary, add bass, remove mouth noise, and then save it and upload it to ACX. And then the author of the book listens to the chapter. Hopefully they're listening to it as they go along, because I've had other authors who wait till the very end and go back and listen, and I'm like, wait a second, you got an 11-hour book to listen to, so
Yeah.
if you wait till the very end and listen to the whole thing, it's going to be forever before this thing actually gets published. So
Yeah.
a lot of times I like to have them listen to it as I go along, because there's another reason for that. Because if, let's say, for example, I do character voice, not caricature voices, but I do character voices a lot of times, because it's just easier for readers to follow, especially when you have writers that aren't really good at adding prompts to help the reader understand who's speaking. So voices help. So let's say, for example, I record chapter 1 and I use a particular voice for a character, and the author doesn't listen to the book until it's completely done, and they go, yeah, I didn't like that voice you used for that character. I was like, yeah, now I've got to re-record the whole damn book.
Yeah.
So it's just best to listen to it as you go. And that's really the process. It's lengthy. It takes about, depending on the length of the book, it takes about a month or two to record an entire book. I've reached the point now where I'm trying to cut back on royalty shares, because a lot of times they don't pay off. Because every author right now, every author that I know is, this has been a hard summer for authors, and audiobooks have not been an exception to that. They're not selling like they were in the winter and spring, but that's normal for summer.
And I'm just now starting to get into where I'm actually just got introduced to the ACX, and I had just put 2 books up there, I guess for auditions is how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, yeah, I just recently even learned about that. My wife kind of found it in a Google search, and I had talked to Mark Tufo about it, and yeah, and that's kind of what he had suggested. But yeah, he had said the same thing, that it's kind of hard to get anybody through the whole royalty side of it.
Right.
That basically.
Well, and like I sort of hinted at, it's and any other authors listening out there who have books on ACX that are not getting auditions, don't take it personally. It's a lot of time invested for a narrator. Like I said, at one point I was putting in about 20 hours a week in recording audiobooks, and it's not only is it exhausting, but it's just really consumes a lot of time, and especially right now, the royalty shares just they're not paying off. If you take into consideration the amount of hours I was putting in recording books, and then you look at the payoff that I was getting from most of these books versus the payoff I get for a per finished hour, because my hourly rate is $100 to $200 per finished hour, and I have a number of clients that pay that. But at the same time, most new authors can't afford that. It's expensive. But at the same time, you've got to look at it this way. It's a crapshoot from both sides of the fence. I can audition for a royalty share and it wind up bombing. And I can skip a royalty share and find out that it took off and I missed out on a lot of money that would come in for 7 years, because a royalty share is a 7-year contract. But if you do the math, a royalty share's got to pay off pretty steadily in order, on a monthly basis for it to pay off. And a lot of the times they just don't. And it's, I do a lot of royalty shares right now for friends, for people that are like, hey man, would you please consider doing this book? I just signed a contract for one of those where it was like this guy, really nice guy, had a guy audition for the book. They signed the contract. The guy kind of blew him off, and he's a really cool dude. And he reached out to me, and I said, let me look at it. And I read the sample of the book, and it was a really good sample. I thought, you know what, I'll do it. And of course, I agreed to that right before I signed a contract with a local university to teach a class with them. So now I'm even busier than I was before. So, it's a good problem to have.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times, when there are certain people out there, especially in our genre, that if they reached out to me, I'd be like, hell yeah, of course I would, because they're good people, and they're trying like everybody else. Only the difference is there are certain authors out there that really get it, and there are certain authors out there that don't get it. And those authors that get it, I'm more than willing to help out. So, it just goes to show that this world and our genre that we write in is shrinking. It's getting more and more crowded, and yet at the same time it's getting smaller and smaller. And if you're a dick, you'll get thought of as a dick, and you'll get treated as a dick. And the last thing you want to do is to be that person.
No.
And for the people out there that get it, there are a lot of people out there that, we're more than willing to help you.
Well, I think, kind of what even struck my interest as far as audio, and especially after starting to do this podcast, because I'm starting to, listen to our own podcast quite a bit. And so it's kind of, got to where it's more personal, I guess, for me.
Yeah.
But I was in the military, so I have a lot of, friends and stuff that have PTSD as well. And some of them really just have hard times, being able to necessarily, I guess, pick up books and read.
Sure.
So, That and I actually had a lot of people as far as truck drivers, and then I also had one guy. Uh, I'm trying to think of his name. Is like Jeremy Cannibal, I think's his name,
Mm-hmm.
and he's pretty much blind. So, anyways, he's
Yeah.
always asking, if he can get my books on audio because he really, is interested in them, but he can, actually pick up the books and physically read them. So,
Sure. That's where I got my start, was with, like I said, with the publishing house for the blind. And it was, to me, I did it really because of the reason, the cause. I wanted to help. I wanted to help people with handicaps to be able to experience these books, and it meant a lot to me to do that. And that's really what got me started in this. And back then I started to develop a fan base of people that started requesting the publishing house to get me to record certain books, and that was really cool. And it was interesting because they had a massive studio, and you would go into the studio and you would have a monitor that would sit in it was like a music recording studio, where there was a person on the other side of the glass, and they would listen to you, they would follow along, and as soon as, if you messed up, or if something wasn't quite clear, they would stop you and they would say, okay, start this section all over again. And they did all the mastering. All you did was, you just had a book in front of you and you punched go and you started recording. And and now, as it stands, I have to do all of it. So I have to record and listen to myself and monitor and master and do everything. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand, is it's not just me sitting in front of a mic hitting record, because I have to go back and listen to it all, and then I've got to normalize it and remove all the extraneous sounds. And I have a studio in home, and I'm fortunate. I'm sitting here in front of a one of the nicest mics you can get for podcasting, and it's, and I honestly, I hadn't even, after I did the recording house for the blind, there was a long period where I didn't, not a long period, but a period where I didn't do it. And I picked it back up when I started doing my zombie radio podcast. And I got really interested in podcasting after that. And I thought, you know what, maybe I should go back to recording audio books. Because, just sitting in front of a mic is it's kind of like a comfort food for me.
yeah. Well, and see, we also use Audacity, and I have my mic, and I was actually using it for a little while, but it always kind of picked up like, I don't know, it's almost like a reverb or an echo, and so it always made for going back on through all this to do that. It's way worse. So actually, because I was running everything through my PA system, I have my full setup in my office here. But so I finally just unplugged all of that and started running it straight through my laptop, and I've had, I guess, a little bit easier to run at it, going through and doing the normalizing and being able to take out all that kind of little things there.
The problem you might have been having with Audacity is under the transport section. There is an option called overdub, and that may have been on. So what was happening is, while you're recording, it was also playing what you're recording at the same time. So it'll come out of your speakers at the same time when you're trying to speak. So then you get reverb in that. That could have been what's happening. Audacity's been my bread and butter for a long time. Mostly because I'm an open source guy. I use Linux, and I've been using Audacity for years now, and it's just, of all of the programs I've used for recording, it's been the easiest. There are certain tools out there like Ardour and Pro Tools, and all. It's just overkill for audiobooks and podcasts. You don't need that many program or plugins and tools. It's just too much. And Ardour requires Jack, and Jack is really complicated. And I don't want to have to deal with that when I've already got to deal with so much time consuming things already. So
yeah. Well, no, I'm also used to using that Acid Music Studios.
Oh, sure.
So this is kind of, I guess you'd say, a little new to me, but
Yeah.
for a lot of people that don't know, it's Audacity is a free program that anybody can pretty much get. Well, you're the first person that we've ever had on the show, I guess, to pertain to acting, other than Waylon Revis that we had that was from Mushroom Head.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, how I guess did you really get started into that?
Well, it started out in high school, way back when. I was in speech class, and you might appreciate this maybe. We had to do a section of poetry, and so I walked up in front of everybody and said, "I'm going to read The Fountain of Lamneth by Rush," and so I start reading it, and then my teacher said, "Yeah, okay, so if you don't audition for the next production, I'm going to fail you in class." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I went in. It was a musical, and I had never done anything like this. So I walk in, and I sang this pop song, and I got cast. And as soon as we started rehearsing, I'm like, "Holy crap, this is home!" And it's and at the time, I was actually planning on going to college to study marine biology because I was in the upper 1% in biology in the United States in my graduating class. Biology was my shtick. And I remember going to my biology teacher and saying, "Yeah, dude, that's not going to happen now." And I chose a college. I said, "I'm going to major in theater and communications." I graduated from there. I went directly from there to Purdue University, where I got a master's degree in acting. And then I went right from there. I just kind of walked right into a 20-year career from that. And it was amazing. And some of the places I performed were just it was magical. And I taught some classes along the way, and so I'm kind of coming back around full circle again. And it's been great. And honestly, what's really interesting is that all of my acting training has, I think, done more for my writing than anything else. Because all of the improvisation, all of the script analysis and the period work and the clown work and the comedy work, everything I did, especially in graduate school, it has helped me to become a better writer. Like with dialogue, I hear writers talk about how much trouble they have with dialogue. I'm like, that's like the easiest part of writing a book, but that's just because of my training, and I actually started writing back in graduate school. I remember I was doing a production of Tartuffe, and I was playing Tartuffe, and he doesn't come until the third act. So I'm sitting here through the first two acts, and at the time, me and a bunch of friends were playing Vampire the Masquerade, and role playing game, and we were doing these marathon sessions, and we were all just digging it, and the character that I was playing, I loved so much, and I thought, you know what, I want to continue his story. So I started writing his story on paper backstage during this play, and I finished the story, and I was like, man, that was fun. And I set it aside for a while, and then I started working in this one. I was a part of a rep company for this one theater, and I would work 9 months of the year, and then 3 months of the year I would have off. And I thought, I've got to fill that time up. So that first 3-month period on that first gig or that first contract, I thought, let me write a book. So I started writing this book, and I didn't finish it in the first 3 months because, it was my first really full-length novel. But I kept going, and by the next year, when I had that 3 months off, I finished that book. And there was something about that, you finish your first full-length novel, and I so distinctly remember typing the last word in that book and leaning back in my chair thinking, wow, I did this. I need to start another one. So I immediately started writing my second book. And at the time I was writing thrillers because I knew that when I started doing this, I didn't want to start writing horror right away because horror was my passion, and it had been my passion since I was a little kid. and I wanted to wait until I had the chops that I knew that I actually could write in the horror genre. I wanted to respect it in the way I felt it deserved. So after 3 or 4 books, I finally woke up one morning and realized it's time. So I dove in and wrote my first zombie book, which is I, Zombie I, and I haven't stopped since.
You're a pretty interesting guy. You definitely you definitely achieved a lot already throughout your career.
Yeah, I was also a hairdresser. And I was a professional audio installation technician, and I was a computer support technician. Yeah, I've done a lot.
Well, you speaking of books, you actually got a new one that's going to be releasing out soon, correct?
Yeah, it's the 6th official novel in the iZombie series. It's called Fry Zombie Fry, and then there are 4 spin-off novels. And I'm gonna, as soon as I finish, actually right now I'm writing a Frankenstein novel. As soon as I finish the Frankenstein novel, then I'm going to go back and write the sequel to The Last Casket. That's a novella series that stars the psychobilly Van Kitty in a casket. And I've been waiting to write the sequel because we wanted to release the book and their next CD at the same time. So I'm waiting. They're about to finish the recording of the CD, and then they're going to send me, the guitarist is going to send me some notes on the songs, because I sent them an outline. I don't usually do outlines, but they're like, could you send us an outline so we'd like to try to follow the story. So I sent them an outline, and then they sent me a note back saying, well, some of the songs didn't make it into the album, and then there's some new songs. We'll send you some notes, and you can revise the outline. Plus, we have a new drummer. So I said, okay, that's fine. I'll write a prologue to kill off the old drummer and introduce the new drummer. So that's going to release in February. I think February 16th, and it hasn't even been written yet. But and then I'm going to start a young adult series based on the iZombie series, this series has been amazing. It was originally going to be a single book. I woke up one morning and I had this question in my head, and the question was, what would it be like? What would it feel like and smell like and taste like to become a zombie? And I realized the only way to answer that question was to write a book about it. So I wrote the book, and I published it, and I was, this was quite a while ago, and I was, this was before The Walking Dead really hit, and I was surprised at how much feedback I got and how popular it became so quickly. And I thought I got to continue this, but I'm not going to spoil anything. But at the end of that book, you realize, well, how in the hell do you continue that? Well, I figured out a way to continue it, and I thought, okay, I'll make it a trilogy. I wrote the trilogy, and I remember distinctly thinking, I have way too much story left to tell in this book. So I thought, I'm just going to make it open-ended. I'm just going to write this until I feel all of a sudden that I'm donning the leather jacket and the skis, and I'm about ready to jump the shark. And I've already got I have had this in the works for a long time now. I'm going to have a new series based on this series that's going to be set 30 years after this series ends. And I've just been holding off on starting to write that series because there's no end in sight to this series right now. And I've got 4 spin-offs already, and it's, people like their zombies, and I'm very happy about that.
And I actually have a zombie short story, but I've never actually sat down and did, I guess, for a novella or a novel. And it's actually been very high in demand from fans of mine for me to do so. And, I kind of wanted to, pick the perfect time for me to do so, simply because the fact that there has been so many approaches to zombies through books and movies, and I definitely wanted to, be able to take my own approach.
Right.
So I actually have 2 that I'm going to be writing this coming year.
Yeah.
And actually, I think one I'm going to be writing together with P.M. Barnes.
Oh, cool.
So, anyways, we'll see how that turns out, because me and her, is kind of pretty what's a good word for it? We're pretty I guess hyper in the field, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So with your books, I mean, you're published out. Are you actually with a publishing house, or do you publish them out yourself?
No, a very long time ago, I made a conscious choice to self-publish, because I have a lot of friends who have been royally screwed over by big publishers, by small publishers, and I'm not a control freak, but I know. For example, I know where the iZombie series is going, and I don't want somebody saying, "Yeah, I think you need to take it this way," because that's my baby, and there's just no way that I would give control of that over to somebody else. Now, with my Frankenstein novel, I am going to submit it to some small presses. I have zero desire at this moment to submit to large presses. I have submitted to large presses and to agents, and the thing is that with the way things are going now, I don't necessarily believe, I don't have a lot of faith in large publishers right now. And the truth of the matter is, at least the way I see it now, I have a great amount of respect for small publishers, a great amount of respect. But the thing is that you have to stop and ask yourself, what are they going to do for me that I can't do for myself? And I understand that a lot of writers look at the small presses and think, well, they're another audience that I can't tap. It's a way for me to get my book edited, so I don't have to pay for it. I get a cover made. It's all that. Well, I have an editor that I pay. I pay a pretty handsome sum to my editor to do my books. I do my own covers. I already do a lot of my own promotion, and it's just a choice I made, and I don't regret it at all. The thing is I know people that are with a small press, and they're selling about the same amount of books that I sell. The big difference is their small press is taking a cut of their profits before the dollars ever roll into their bank account, whereas the only person taking a cut out of my profit is Amazon. So actually, what I should say is, I don't know if the small presses, if their percentage is geared toward Amazon taking a cut. I don't know, but I know exactly what's happening to my books right now at all times, and I like that. And the reason why I'm going to submit my Frankenstein book is simply just because I want to try. I haven't submitted in a long time, and I just want to, say, this will be my 27th book, and hopefully, they'll look at it and think, well, okay, yeah, it's worth our time, and it'll be worth my time as well. But there is something to be said about that untapped audience. These small presses, there are people out there that purchase books from a small press because it comes from that small press. Yeah. And so it may be worth it, but at the same time, I'm struggling with this because it's almost October, and October is a perfect time for this Frankenstein book. On top of which, there's this new movie with James McAvoy coming out, and it will be the ideal time. A long time ago, I predicted that I felt like the next big monster to hit was going to be a Frankensteinish monster, and I would love to get this thing out now, because I write my first drafts. It takes me about 2 months to write a first draft. It usually takes me about it will take me that much time, and then my author usually takes about a month. So the editing process is almost as long as my writing process, because after the editor, then you have to then she and I have to go back and forth on it, and then it has to go to proofreaders. So I could conceivably get my Frankenstein book out for Halloween, and how perfect is that? And but I don't know. So I'm struggling with that right now, and I've got another band that I've written a few books with bands, and I was thinking about another band to write a novel, and I was thinking of a sequel to this Frankenstein novel that I think that band would work with. Maybe, I don't know, but every writer I know, it's like your brain is constantly moving, and it's just that's what you have to do now. The waters are moving so swiftly, and we have to know how to navigate those waters without drowning and without getting tossed to the shore.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I definitely see kind of your thought process with the publishers and all that, because whenever I first started out, I didn't know about too many of these places, so I actually the only place that I'd been told about was blurb.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I put my book out there, and they're over there trying to sell my book for $70. And
how much?
$70.
$70? Good God!
Yeah, I got 2 sales out of all that, and one of those sales was me buying my own book. And anyways, yeah, it was horrible. And anyways, and then so I got to learn about CreateSpace. And I barely got into CreateSpace whenever I had this, publishing company hit me up, or so-called publishing company, and it turned out to be a scam artist company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I got screwed out of thousands of dollars.
Oh.
And they finally, just pretty much tried to buy me out. And I think they gave me like $120.
Oh my God.
So yeah, I lost out royally. And yeah, I was still talking to a bunch of authors, and that was kind of the direction that they were saying that I still need to try. So I signed with another publishing company, and yeah, I come to realize, that they were just taking on any author that they could get their hands on.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if they had good books, bad books, erotica, horror, thriller,
right.
Whatever it was, and they were throwing all my books out with erotica.
Wow.
And anyways, needless to say, my sales went from, an average of about 67 to 72 ebooks alone per day to like nothing. Like I was getting checks. I mean, they were 20 to 30 cents per month, and I was just like,
yeah.
Okay. So I actually recently just started talking to the Burning Willow Press,
mm-hmm.
and I actually have Kendra Souder that's going to be on the show a little bit later today. So basically what we've came up with is I'd let them kind of take a look at one of my books,
mm-hmm.
and we might can see what they can do with one of my books. Unfleshed was my 35th release, so those other 34 that I have, I'm going to kind of keep those to myself until I can actually see what they can do with the one, because that's where I guess I'd say I'd made my mistake with the other so-called publishers, is I just gave them full reins of everything I had.
Right. Yeah, so that's a mistake. But the thing is a lot of people come into this business with these wide eyes, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can write a book. I'm going to make millions." Well, no, you're not going to make millions. It's just not that way anymore. The days of the Stephen Kings and the J.K. Rowlings, it's going to have to be a perfect storm for someone to come into that kind of fame and fortune again, because there are just so many writers now. I tell people all the time, I say, I think that at this very moment there are more writers than there are readers.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, just think about it. Look at Facebook. Look, you go onto any Facebook group that is supposed to be dedicated to readers and writers, and what is there?
Oh, it's just link after link.
Yeah, I combed through one of those groups that had over 2,000 members, and this was a reader-writer group. and every member was a writer.
Yep.
And that doesn't bode well. And the thing, bless you. And the thing is that you have all of these writers in these groups promoting, just slamming, just one after another, promote, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Well, guess what? That doesn't work.
Well,
It's like, it was like, you remember back in the 90s going into Radio Shack? And as soon as you walk through the door, all these salesmen were on you. Can I help you? What do you need? I was like, I don't, get away from me. Let me just look around.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's like.
Well, and going on any of those, I mean, that's what I tell people all the time. I guess it's good to get into like horror groups to where it's not just books, because you can actually talk to people on a personal basis. Like Horror Geeks, I love being in that group.
I love, that's a good group. The only downfall of that group is, and this isn't I'm not slamming the group because I think there's some really great people in there, but you get a collection of people like that together, and most of what they want to talk about are movies.
Yeah.
And there are just a select few people in the group that actually have any interest in books, and that's okay. That's fine. But that's what we run against. So it's like going to a convention, and I've been watching this steadily over the last few years. It's harder and harder and harder for novelists to gain any attention at conventions now, because like you go to Fandom Fest here in Louisville, and there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people there, and 98% of them are just there to see the celebrities.
Yeah.
And writers wind up stuffed in a corner altogether alone.
And I've been invited for the last 3 years to be part of that horror film festival.
Mm-hmm.
They usually have it in Austin, Texas, every October. And I've been pretty busy. So I mean, for anybody that's listening to this, it's not that I just didn't go, but I actually have a hard time, I guess, kind of getting myself to where I want to go, because I mean that is why people are there. It's a film festival, so I mean people are there to meet the people in the movies, to see the new films. They're not necessarily there to pick up my book and be like, oh well, this is what I'm going to take home with me.
Right. Yeah. Here's a perfect example of that. I went to Scarefest a few years ago, and I don't know how it happened, but my table was right across from the cast of the original Hellraiser movie. So I had Doug Bradley and I can't even think of his name, the Chatterer Cenobite, and Kirsty Cotton, the whole, and Tony Todd was there, and I was effectively on Celebrity Row, except on the corner to the right, where these guys from this reality TV show, it was like a Ghost Hunters or something, and the line to get to see them was all the way down the room, out the door, and down the hall. So you have these people from this reality TV show who are pretty much have been pedestaled and looked upon as the celebrity to see, while at the same time the man that played Pinhead was right next to them with no one at his table. And let alone an author trying to sell books, because those people had no interest in books, and most of them had no idea who Doug Bradley was. And these were people coming to a horror convention.
Yeah.
And it was just the celebrity du jour. And that's what's happening with conventions now, especially if you go to a convention where any cast member of The Walking Dead is there. Forget about it.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had some of them up here at this last event. It's in Dallas, I believe. I can't remember what the name of that event was. I know a bunch of people from Horror Geeks and all that was going to it though. It wasn't like the Phantom Fest, but
I went to a festival recently, and there was a really cool dude there that was in like 2 or 3 episodes of The Walking Dead, and that was it. But he was the big celebrity.
Yeah.
And there were best-selling authors, and when I say best-selling authors, I have I have a big problem with that title, best-selling author, because way too many people use it. Like, look, if you're a best-selling author, that means you have sold a bestseller's author's worth of books. That's like, that's the one thing that the music industry has got right. You can't claim to be a best-selling band unless you've got a platinum album or a gold album or something like that. They have metrics for that. Yet at the same time, in the world of authors, the second you see your dinosaur porn novel hit number one on the free list, you can all of a sudden say, I'm a best-selling author. Well, guess what? No, you're not. You're not a best-selling author. And I know. And the other problem is that there are companies out there whose sole purpose is to work the system of the New York Times best-selling author list or the USA bestsellers author list, so they can get you on that list, so you can claim to have that.
Yeah.
It's just like this rotating carousel of working the system. And it actually, I think that it removes any significance to that title.
Well, did you know that if you submit up to the New York Times, unless your store or your books are in actual physical bookstores, they automatically just throw your book away?
Right, of course, and that is kind of part and parcel to this whole I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back. That's the big six publishers, working their own system. Trying to get trying to get our books in a bookstore is almost impossible now, unless it's a small mom and pop bookstore in your hometown, and that's fine, because with the exception of true book nerds, bookstores are kind of going the way of the dinosaur. The thing that everybody really has to just accept is that subscription-based services are the norm now. You cannot escape it.
Honestly, it being a lot like a Blockbuster and all that, pretty soon it just turns into like now we have Redbox.
Exactly. And I think that all of these people that say that are turning their backs on Kindle and all of that, you're only going to be able to turn your back for so long. It's like, I had a friend of mine who's also a writer, but he's gone the path of the traditional path. He said the other day my Blu-ray player died on me, and I went to Best Buy to buy a new Blu-ray player, and no one there that worked there knew what I was talking about. They're all young kids, and they had no idea what a Blu-ray player was. Everything is subscription based, and you've probably got, like I have, a huge collection of DVDs.
Oh yeah.
And if my DVD player dies, I might not be able to watch them anymore. And that's just the way it is. If Netflix is the norm now, Hulu is the norm now, Amazon is the norm.
Yeah, well, I've tried Netflix before, and they play the same things over and over and over again, and I mean. I don't know if I'm not into say drama, but that's what they have the most of. Then I mean,
Yeah.
I just limited myself down. So I like watching a lot of horror stuff. So
Yeah.
And I have got introduced, I guess, to some new films through Netflix, but hey, it's on the next day and the next day and the next day, and it's just like,
right.
I want some variety.
But now you have streaming services like Shudder, which are horror specific.
Yeah.
And but then you look into their catalog, and you realize you've either seen most of them or they're not worth seeing. It's a lot of old bad movies from the 70s and 80s. I love some good 80s horror. And I actually like B horror and B sci-fi. But my point is that for the masses, streaming services are the norm, and it's just the way it is.
Oh yeah, and I'm definitely the same. I really just think horror's kind of taken a bad turn compared to what it was in the 80s for these days. Most people go more for the gore factor instead of the actual scare factor, which to me actually made it more of a horror anyway.
Right. Oh, I agree. The found footage horror films, To do those right takes a real genius. And if the Taking of Deborah Logan was the only found footage horror film that I have seen in the last 5 years that it was actually quite a good film. But and I say this somewhat tongue in cheek, but the torture porn genre, when Saw came out, it was genius. But once you've seen it, you've seen it.
Yeah.
In Saw 2 and Saw 3 and Saw 4, it's like, okay, stop beating this dead horse. And we've reached a point now where the only thing Hollywood can do is remake the movies that worked. And that's fine. I'm okay with remakes, because it brings validity to and exposure back to the original film. But, when all you've got are remakes, then you've got a problem.
Yeah. Well, Jack, it's been really nice having you on our show. We're coming out to an end now, but real quick, would you kind of tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at jackwallen.com. That is my official website where you can get all the information you need about my books. You can listen to my Zombie Radio podcast at zombieradio.org. Don't expect your normal podcast. It is a fictional character from my iZombie series. So they're short podcasts. There's usually some really killer music involved. You can find me on Amazon. Just search my name. You can find me on Twitter at JL Wallen. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/author.jackwallen.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for being on our show.
You're very welcome, sir.
Burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground.